G'day, welcome to Say It With Guitars. I'm your host, Pete Cornelius. Each episode I'll be digging deep and getting to hang with some of Australia's finest guitar pickers, songwriters, producers, collectors and makers. I look forward to bringing you these fun conversations and I hope you enjoy Say It With Guitars. Hey guys, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Say It With Guitars. Oh man, it's been a few busy weeks. Got to get back over onto the mainland for the Bendigo Blues and Roots Festival. Always had a great time visiting Bendigo and playing some tunes over in some of those great venues and hanging out with some good people and playing some fun shows. That was fantastic. And I hope you enjoyed our previous podcast with Jed Pickett. I'll actually be playing with Jed on Sunday. We're doing a show down at the Longley International Hotel. We're playing a bunch of Beatles tunes, mainly the Revolver record. So it's been a hoot, especially learning the guitar harmony on Bird Can Sing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's chat with Lucie Thorne. Before we crack into today's show, I'd like to shout out to our sponsor, Mr. Billy Tarrant from Tarrant Guitars. Billy's an amazing luthier and he makes some real sweet instruments. I'm lucky enough for him to have built me a 00 size acoustic guitar, which I've dragged all around the country and it's sounding better than ever. So yeah, check out tarrantguitars.net.au, Tassie's one-stop custom workshop for custom-made guitars, all guitar repairs and services. Let's get into the show. All right, I'd like to welcome to Say Guitars our very special guest today, Miss Lucie Thorne. Lucie, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Pete. How are
Excellent.
you going?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Just trying to stay dry because goodness me, it is wet.
Yeah, it's pretty miserable out there.
I think I left half my tyre on your driveway by doing a little, because it's quite steep.
Yeah, it's one of the world's shittest driveways, it's true.
How do you tackle that late at night?
Well, it hasn't been a problem of mine for decades, actually. You know, we're here in my my old family home in West Launceston, and yeah, nearly everything about this place is great except that driveway. So well done.
Yeah, well done. So yeah, thanks again for joining us today. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a pleasure to be here in your family home.
Well, it's great to have you up here, and you know, it is the last hurrah of this long-standing Thorne household. Yeah. So I know you can't see it out there, listeners, but we're surrounded by piles of treasure that's slowly getting sorted and packed and redistributed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just noticed a few great vinyls up on the shelf there. I'm sure there's many. Oh,
there's so many.
Yeah.
And luckily there is no problem in knowing how to rehome those because that's coming with me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And first thing when I walked in the door, I saw Old Faithful over there in the corner. Mm-hmm. But I also noticed, you know, one I haven't seen before.
Okay, but also the listeners can't see what you're talking about when you say Old Faithful.
Old Faithful.
It's not telly, is it?
No, it's not telly. No, I'm glad it's not either.
You are referring to my beautiful 1966 Guild Starfire, whose name is Loretta.
Shall we talk straight about Loretta? Why not?
Sure.
So,
yeah. She's the love of my life.
Every gig I've seen, you've had that on, and it's like an extension of your brain, your fingers, your mind. To me, when I see that guitar on other people as well, not that personal.
Yeah, no, not many people get to do that.
No. But you see that guitar on other people, and I'm like, it's not right. It's not.
Oh,
it's
really?
not the connection that you have with that guitar. Like something about that instrument. I don't know. Just tell me about how did you come across that guitar and how's your relationship going with it?
Yeah, great. Well, I'd played acoustic. I mean, my first couple of guitars were really shitty electrics, but when I started really exploring being a guitarist as well as a singer and a songwriter, you know, first sort of good decade of that was predominantly acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And a really dear old friend of mine who actually helped me make my first couple of albums had this guild along with a whole lot of other guitars. It's a long story, but the short version is he was kind of hoping to do the import-export thing, but I think he was having a problem with the export part of the equation.
I know that predicament. Yeah.
You know that predicament. Yeah. So he said to me, he's like, I really think this guitar is, is your next guitar. And I bought a beautiful Phil Carson Crickmore acoustic a couple of years prior to that, and was so in love with that guitar. I still have it. I still love it.
Great.
But I didn't see myself. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to play an electric. It doesn't really feel like my thing. And also, I was completely broke.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was quite insistent, and cut me this really friendly deal. Said, just pay me $50 a week for freaking ages. And it's yours. Anyway, so that was maybe 16 or 17 years ago. And yeah, it did take us a little while. I'm pretty slow in a lot of regards, but they're obviously such different creatures. Every sort of guitar is such a different creature. So
absolutely.
It took me quite a long time to get my hands around it and work out how to play this thing. And it wasn't, until I started writing on the Guild that our relationship really sort of started to form. And I haven't looked back. There's been a couple of occasions where I've, brought the acoustic out for a gig, but she's my one true love. And I guess, I'm a very I'm a self-taught, intuitive kind of player, and over the years, I guess I've developed a kind of particular sound and the way that I write on that guitar, and the way that I sing, and my funny kind of lower MIDI breathy sound, and running that guitar through tremolo, and it's a sound that's kind of really
it's a sound that probably has evolved, but it's also at the core the same sound that it was 15, 20 years ago when you first played it. But you didn't quite get to know it intimately enough to sort of trust it, perhaps, or to really to go with what it was. And plus, playing through an amplifier, playing an acoustic guitar plugged in through a PA system or whatever is a totally different beast.
Yeah.
And I don't think that will ever become anyone's comfort, like an acoustic through a PA.
Go on. Really?
Well, yeah, really. But I think the electric guitar, being a hollow body, it's also got that extra element of surprise, when you plug in, and sometimes a room will just be your worst enemy. Sometimes a room will be an enhancement.
Well, and all the, the kind of gnarly rattles and sort of inner distortions that sometimes she can have, without being amplified. Or, there's so much scope for, obviously for, a whole range of sonic palettes to come out of one of those little guys. So,
yeah. So did you find yourself writing differently? Like as soon as you became comfortable with that guitar, did you sort of approach songwriting differently, do you think?
Well, it definitely was a great kick up the arse for my playing, because I was trying. I guess, all those years ago, I started off just sort of trying to impose my acoustic skills onto this other kind of instrument, and clearly, as anyone would know, that's not actually that's how it really works. So, and as around that time, I started experimenting with, with some open tunings, and so I feel like it took a while to feel comfy, being more exploratory and more sort of. I'm a big fan of space, and so it's not like, I guess it's, exploring those kind of tonal capacities of this particular instrument, and how that sits together with my writing. So it's like, lyrically, harmonically, melodically, rhythmically, I've never really, it's not like I don't write poetry for the page, and I don't really play instrumental music, all those things are really connected to me, for me. So, and it's It's kind of the best fun ever, isn't it? Trying to make little songs up.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's something I really need to make more time for, is for the creation of songs. I find myself noodling far too much. And
Come on, Pete, you can't noodle too much.
There's only so many noodles you can really get down in one session.
Yeah.
Because I find myself, I know, perhaps I need to listen to other people, perhaps like open my ears and my eyes a bit with other influences, or even reading. I probably should be reading, different things, different books, different authors, different genres, just to sort of get things ticking a bit more. But I find myself, I'm sure I'm not alone in the musical world, but yeah, I find myself just sort of slipping into the same old sort of comfort zone. And
Sure, yeah.
that's where I find. But it's probably, I think when I get to that stage, I just go, maybe I should get on the guitar, and that might help me, find some creative juices, perhaps.
Yeah.
So that's my downfall.
Nice.
It's one of my weak spots.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back. Do you run flat wounds on the guitar?
Round wounds.
Round wounds?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and usually really heavy gauge too.
Okay.
14 to 56s or thereabouts.
Wow. 14s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I mean, it's what you get used to, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't describe my left hand as too kind of clumpy. But, when you get used to when you're playing really heavy gauge, it's sort of like pick up other guitars and go, I think there's some serious intonation problems with that. And it's like, no, I think those intonation problems are in your left hand, Thorny.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's how she's
Cool.
happily set up.
So I guess you can tune down quite easily as well,
Yeah.
and then have the tension of those big strings to keep things.
she's really happy in Dad Gad. I've been playing some open C tunings, which is, it's a slight push, but it's, that's as low as she'll go.
Yeah.
But hence this new little friend, which I know you can't see out there in podcast world either, but little Greenie, which is a little baritone. So that's actually currently tuned to a weird open A tuning.
Cool.
Which again is a whole new world for both my hands, actually, getting my hands around this. But so fun.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, such a great palette to, as soon as you start going down below D's and C's, you get around the B and A area.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, why haven't I
I
discovered
know.
this already?
And I mean, I work a lot solo, but my main combo is with the incredible Hamish Stewart on the drums. So, we're a sort of a long-standing duo who rarely have a bass player. There are times where we expand the lineup, but, that I can kind of... I'm not getting in anyone else's way if I'm just down that little bit end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So it's good fun.
Absolutely. And have you found... When I've seen you play, you've been using a Mesa Boogie. Mm-hmm. Do you still play with that, or do you
No, I haven't got the Boogie anymore.
Right. Because some guitar amps don't like it down that low.
It's true.
The small little ones that we like to use don't like those.
Yeah. No, my only amp at the moment is this beautiful little Princeton. And it seems to respond pretty happily.
Great.
Down there.
Down there?
Yeah.
Down there where the guitars don't go that often. That's cool. So is it a normal scale, that green machine?
It's a little bit longer.
Okay.
I don't know the numbers, but it's not... I mean, it doesn't look that much longer,
No,
does it?
no, it's very, very well hidden.
But, it's got a little bit extra length on it to help it and hold itself together down there.
That's great. So what brought that on? Was it just...
Do you know, to be honest, I mean, I have been thinking about getting a baritone for a while.
Yeah.
But just before I came back down here to Tassie, in fact, literally the day I got on the boat, I went to my local guitar shop in Melbourne to get some strings. And I accidentally came out with that because it was really cheap. It was on special.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, shit. I did not mean to buy a guitar today. But,
did you get the strings?
I did, thank you,
good.
yes.
Okay.
I remembered to get the strings. Just last weekend here in Lonnie, I'd been invited to do a few songs. The Tasmanian Poetry Festival was having its first event of the season, which was actually a musical event, doing a tribute to Leonard Cohen and Joni Mitchell.
Ah, cool.
So I'd signed myself up for doing a few Joni songs.
Great.
And, I'm a massive fan, but it actually... I'm such a fan that I was actually really deeply reticent to try and play some of those songs because it's just like, what do you,
Yeah.
how do you touch that stuff?
Absolutely.
Anyway, I'd landed the songs and, agreed to do it and then realised it was like, I need at least 12 frets to play. I can't be capoing this shit because I need the whole length of the guitar.
Yeah.
Which then really clearly limits your key options.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't find a key to sing these bloody songs in that's not too high or too low. Anyway, my solution was to get a new guitar and...
Cool.
That's... Whoopsie. Anyway, so...
How did it go? Was it its debut outing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did say to the little Barry... I know it's an inanimate object, but I did say before we went on stage, I was like, I feel like it's a little early in our relationship to be going public like this. But all the best,
All the best.
Come on, be my friend.
Yeah.
I think it went fine. I mean, to be honest, it was such an emotional event. For those listeners who don't know, my dear darling dad and my mama, they were both involved in setting up the Tasmanian Poetry Festival back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it was the first year that, since they'd both died. And everyone was there, everyone came out of the woodwork and, I get nervous at the best of times, but, all of those ingredients plus playing three Joni songs that are a little bit outside my department on a brand new guitar, I felt a little bit, woo! Anyway, apparently it was incredibly convincing.
Yeah. You wouldn't have even known.
That's right.
Like, you would have got there
Professional show
and it would have
business.
been a blur. The whole thing would have just been a blur, I imagine. Like, you look back at it now and going, did that even happen? Like, I'm sure at the time it would have been a very emotional, charged performance. Did you have you learnt her songs in the past? Like, have you learnt her tunings and things like that? Or have you kind of done your own versions of...
No, there's a couple of songs of hers that, when I was starting out all those decades ago, I taught myself a couple of her songs that were in standard, some more straightforward ones. But so this is actually the first time, and I sort of can't believe, for all my love of her body of work and my love of experimenting with tuning, it's sort of weird to me that I had never sat down and gone, okay, what tuning is Amelia in?
Yeah.
And what are the shapes?
Yeah.
So super fun thing to actually get around to do, and then just got so excited. I guess a lot of that material, I don't tend to do covers anyway, around the kitchen table,
Yeah.
But to actually sort of get my hands around those shapes in those tunings was just like, goodbye world. I might not be seen again for ages.
Yeah.
I got a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun to be had.
Gonna follow this track through the scrub and down to the road. I got the wind at my back. I got my collar up against the cold. Against the cold. down through the love.
Did the songs kind of like take on new, or did the songs like come out naturally when those tunings? Because I've actually never done it either. I've never gone through her material and checked out the tunings.
Yeah, and there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, my ears always just been so drawn to and so in love with the way she voices. So, like her whole harmonic sense is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
But yeah, to find out, if you've got, A, E, B, C sharp, it's really straightforward. If they're your open strings, those shapes are actually, it's just right under your fingers. It's actually not that complex. So woohoo, I mean, that's another thing to then trying to deliver them convincingly. But and I guess, I mean, I have been, I'd always just retune my one beautiful guitar. But now that there are several different sorts of tunings that I'm really into at the moment.
Yep.
I can see myself barreling down the road of, well, I might just need
that extra guitar.
because there's got to be one just sitting there and tuning X.
Absolutely. And once they live in that tuning for a while, they kind of open up to that sound.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can have one instrument that goes all around the place, but and they have a happy place. Every instrument has their own little comfort zone.
Yeah.
And even with string gauges, I don't want to get too techie.
Yeah, don't get too techie on me because
no.
my eyes are glazed over, let alone the listeners. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You're right. I was just harking back to the Lucky Oceans one where we were getting a bit technical. But like string gauges, like it's important to have a good gauge that feels right for that tuning. And if you've got a guitar set up for finger style, and then you go, I might just put on a slide and go down to open D. It's not going to work.
No.
You kind of need to have a dedicated instrument, which, is unfortunate for the wives and the partners of us musicians who collect things at will. But hey.
Oh, well, could be worse.
Could be worse. That's right. So was Joni an influence early days or did you come...
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I remember... when I was lucky enough to grow up, in this very house with an extraordinary record collection. Both Mum and Dad were huge music fans. Neither of them were... I mean, Mum liked to sing and play a little bit of piano in the old days, but yeah, they're both active listeners and big music lovers of a whole range of different stuff. So I sort of was exposed to a real variety of things from an early age. But I remember as a kind of early teenager, I guess, feeling like I was making my own personal discoveries in their record collection. Yeah. And at around the same time, I discovered, but you do. You feel like it's like you've made this discovery. So Joni Mitchell, Nina Simone, Billie Holiday and Janis Joplin.
Great.
All around the same time. And they all just, it just turned all the dials on for me. I was just like, I don't even know really what that is, but that's what I want. Yeah. That just, that is really exciting. So, I'd always loved to sing. Yeah, and but so the guitar did sort of start to come, I guess in my early teens, was when I first, picked up a guitar.
Yeah.
But it was really, I would put on just for my own self, occasionally for my dear patient parents, but, I'd make up whole sort of concerts singing along to, back-to-back cassette.
Right.
Like really loving it. And I get my first performances were as a singer with the St Joe's Big Band, actually, here in town. Yeah. So doing all of that jazz repertoire, which I love to this day.
Yeah.
But that was sort of around the time that I got interested in songwriting. I remember preparing for some gig that I was doing with St Joe's and Misty was on the set and, I was walking around thinking, look at me, I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. I'm not really feeling that way, I love singing this material, but, the stories weren't mine. It wasn't, that material didn't really resonate with me in a way that, as I sort of, dived into Joni's songwriting world, for example, it'd be like, oh, wow, you can write like really wild, deep, poetic shit that's incredibly personal and also political and or, you know, like just there are no limits to what you can put in a song if you want to. I mean, you know. Yeah. So, that was when I got excited about trying to write my own stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So cool. Because, you're right. Singing or just performing material that belongs to someone else has a vibe, and it's good for your skills and your development and all that sort of stuff. I think it's really important to learn other people's music, but it's until you can recognise that, this, you know, I'm not singing about things that I relate to or are contemporary or the things that I can emotionally commit to. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So until you have that realisation, I think it's like, it's a pretty important factor in someone's career, I think. Yeah. And it takes time, you know. God, I'm sure most people still struggle with really saying what they want to without in song form, you know. So the guitar, was the guitar and accompanying, did you sort of go, oh, I really want to sing, I really want to write these lyrics. Do I learn guitar to accompany myself, or did you kind of have melodic sensibilities that needed to come out?
No, I mean, at the same time, I sort of had this parallel musical existence because I was a very serious classical violinist as well.
Excellent.
And, you know, there was a piano here, so the piano for me was sort of my first exploratory instrument in that I never had any lessons. Yeah. You know, it's all laid out there, just used my little ears, made stuff up, felt incredibly free on that instrument. You know, the violin was, as much as I loved it and I loved playing in orchestras and I loved, you know, so much of that repertoire I still love, but it was a very, you know, I certainly wouldn't have dreamt of improvising anything, for example. It was very much, you know, I'm learning the dots on the page. I can bring emotion to it in my performance, but it's not it just felt worlds away from starting to muck around on a piano. And so then I think I was in grade 7 and my sister's boyfriend at the time, who was like a bit of a high school rock god, I had like maybe 3 guitar lessons with him. Right. And he would come here. My memory of the lessons was that he would put an AC/DC cassette on. Yeah. Then go into the kitchen and make himself like a whole loaf's worth of jam sandwiches. Then get his drink bottle out and siphon a little bit of everything out of the liquor cabinet. Wow. Top it up with the cask wine. Wow. Just in time, you know, by the time he'd done that, cassette, you know, one side of the cassette had been done. Turn it over. Dad would, you know, give him some money for teaching me the guitar.
Draining his alcohol collection.
But, you know, I mean, he showed me like 1 or 2 shapes for my left hand and introduced me to AC/DC. I mean, that's a lot right there.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah. And, I mean, for all of Mum and Dad's variety of stuff in their collection, I mean, there is a lot of rock and roll in it, but I sort of, you know, I was much more interested in Joni and Nina and Miles Davis and, you know, Warren Zevon and Randy Newman was sort of as rock as I got, which is pretty cute, isn't it? Yeah. But, I was like, oh, shit, AC/DC, okay. Yeah. That was a pretty exciting, you know, start. You can't really call it guitar lessons though, but
it's more of a lifestyle.
Lifestyle. Yeah. Oh shit, that's true. Anyway, and you know, I mean, I mucked around, wrote a few songs. I guess, you know, it took another few years to. I mean, I guess in my early 20s, that's when I really got stuck into exploring. Trying to write, and of course I was dreadful at it for a while, but most of us are. You got to start somewhere, don't you?
Absolutely.
And I'm just so glad that my younger self was so bloody determined, you know, and gung ho to just want to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Because here I am all these years later.
Yeah.
Still doing it.
Still going strong.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How many records have you made, Liz? Is there some that haven't made it to the public realm, or is all your work out?
It's all out there. I've released... I should know the answer to this question, shouldn't I? I think the true answer is 9 LPs and a couple of EPs.
Great.
Most of them are still in circulation. I mean, my very first album is not available. Thank God.
Oh, come on.
I did discover a little pile that Mum had hidden under the bed in the spare room.
Yep.
They will not be seeing the light of day, folks. But, so that's quite a lot of records.
It is. It's a lot of songs.
It's a lot of songs.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never thought of myself as particularly prolific, but it's definitely... It's been the central thing in my life for so long that, you know...
Yeah.
You can have a few years between records and it's still pretty steady, kind of...
Yep.
A steady thing, yeah.
Do you remember your first gig here was it in Lonnie, do you think? Your first sort of, you know...
I mean, I definitely did my
show.
first gigs here in Launceston, but I don't know that I was really doing my own... I mean, after the St Joe's big band thing, I did a few other... I mean, I sang with a couple of other sort of jazz lineups. I had this duo with a dear friend who was a cellist, and, you know, here I was a violinist as well, but we both were really interested in, you know, contemporary songs.
Yes.
As well as the classical repertoire. So we did a few gigs just down the hill at Kachina back in the day,
Yep.
in the 90s. And I reckon we probably did a couple of originals there. But, yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I moved to Melbourne that I started writing more and getting stuck into playing.
Was that a move for musical decisions, like career choice stuff, or is it education, or what took you to the big smoke?
I moved pretty much straight after year 12.
Okay.
And I just had it in my head that I didn't know what I was really going to do. Actually, I just knew I needed to spread my little wings and get to the big city.
Yeah.
And I did end up studying there. I got sort of some of the way through a Bachelor of Arts major. I was planning to major in music. I was studying at La Trobe, so I was sort of doing, you know, music composition. But they actually closed the music department while I was there. So for about 18 months of my part-time uni career, it was mostly being an agitator trying to keep the music department alive. Anyway, we didn't win that one. So I moved over to Melbourne with my best friend. We packed up our little belongings and into her V-dub and got on the boat. And so she was, she's a beautiful musician too. She was studying at VCA. And, I rattled around for a little while, not really knowing what I was going to do. But, I mean, as soon as I moved to Melbourne, I just started going to gigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Absolutely.
and there was something, I had no money, but there's so many gigs that were free or, you know, very cheap, every night of the week, any genre, you know. So I just dived headfirst into that amazing community. And, it's been, I mean, I've lived in various other places over the years, but it's remained kind of my enduring home wherever I am, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Such a great city for that stuff.
And the relationships you would have made with fellow musicians and that sort of stuff, you just can't replace, you know, time spent with those sort of people as mentors or as influencers. Yeah. Or just as friends, you know, far out. It's such a thing you just can't replace.
Yeah.
Blinding lightning as a thunder cracks, rumble from a graphite sky, half the pressure, twice the speed, drawing down a dark grey line, Palomino black wing 602. Looking for a place to land. Ain't much call for all that land. You're only riding sitting down in a shade.
So, do you still sort of call Melbourne home?
Well, I'm actually moving back there officially soon. So
You've been up in the northern New South?
yeah,
Have you?
I mean, you know, the last few years have been so weird for lots of people. And I sort of accidentally moved to northern New South Wales. I had been living in Melbourne, and then it's a long story, but the short version is I was sort of momentarily a bit homeless, and there was a lot of things that were sort of a bit untethered in my world. So I packed up my car, went up north to visit a mate on her farm. So I was like, I'm just going to spend a couple of weeks on her beautiful organic veggie farm, get myself together, work out what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
And then when I was there, I got a call from my dear friend Pieta Brown in the States, and she said, this is super short notice, but can I fly you out to do this tour with me in the Midwest and New England and, you know, down to New York City, like soon, like in a few weeks' time? And I was like, that's what I'm doing next. Amazing. So I go to, this is a long answer to your question.
No,
but
this is great.
So I'm in the States in March 2020, and our last show is in New York City just as the pandemic is just smashing that part of the world. So it was a really surreal tour. I mean, we got all the shows done. It sort of wasn't... I know I was going to hang out in the Midwest for a couple of weeks. Anyway, I was there for an extra week, and then just trying to work out what was actually happening in the world. Anyway, I made it back to Australia literally the day that the borders were shutting. So it was pretty crazy. And I had to, you know, like my car was up in northern New South Wales, and I had to go into isolation for 2 weeks.
Yes.
So I was like, I checked with the guys at the farm. They're like, I was living in a shipping container there, which was great.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So I did my isolation there, and then my quarantine there, and then, you know, obviously the pandemic rolled on. I mean, they were so gorgeous. They were just like, it's so helpful having you here. You know, I was being a part-time farmhand and, you know, hanging out. So, yeah, I sort of accidentally got stuck in, but then happily moved to subtropical paradise.
Great.
Yeah, and I was there for the best part of 2 years, really.
Yep.
So...
And definitely worse places to be in that COVID period. You know, like it's such a beautiful
man,
landscape.
I mean, it was a weird time, but that got me there. But then I was like, I'm actually the luckiest little kid around. Like, I'm living in this... I've always loved a shed or a cabin. You know, I've spent a lot of my life living in kind of strange structures out the back of other people's places. So this is this beautiful 40-foot, you know, pretty sweet Renault shipping container.
Yeah.
And obviously for a full-time touring musician who can't tour, it's like, you know, I did a direct labour exchange, so I helped them on the farm.
Cool.
For my, you know, for my rent and all the organic veggies I could eat, and you sit on the porch with the guitar and you know. And
that's so good to do that, to sort of reset, sort of defrag and just go, okay, cool. I don't have to rely on shows. I don't have to rely on writing. All I got to do is help these friends of mine
weed
on their
the
farm.
carrots and
and just live a simple existence. And to be able to do that, and I guess looking back now, you know, things are always different when you're in the thick of it. But you know, good old hindsight. Yeah. So maybe let's touch on that tour you said you did with Pieta Brown. Mm-hmm. So now her dad, I've got one of his records by Greg Brown. And you guys did a record called Love Over Gold, right? Yeah,
well, that was our band name. So
was that a Dire Straits sort of like...
It's a direct nod, yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, I mean, Pieta's toured with Mark Knopfler over the years. And so I guess, you know, both of us have only ever really worked under our own names, you know. So when we decided to make this collaborative album, we're like, how fun, let's have a name, you know. And then went down the weird spiral that I'm sure everyone endures. We're like, oh yeah, but what is it, you know. Anyway, so when we decided on Love Over Gold, Pieta was like, we should maybe ask Mark if that's okay. And I was like, yep, okay, great. Anyway, he gave us his blessings.
Oh, great.
So, but yeah, I can't believe that record was nearly 10 years ago. But we are
I couldn't find. Is it streamable, or do you have to like have bought it when you guys made it?
Yeah, look, my digital housekeeping is not my strong suit just at the moment, and I'm aware that is a very hard record to find.
I was wondering if it was a label thing or
No,
so
we did it independently. I mean,
Yeah.
we did release it through Vitamin, who used to do all my distro, but they don't really exist anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, so all of my records are on Bandcamp, but we haven't put the Love Over Gold one up there yet. But soon. Thank you for the reminder.
Excellent.
I will
Please
get
do.
onto it.
Yeah.
It's such a pretty record, you know, and we've been talking. In fact, I was almost back there. Life just sort of got a bit hairy and lumpy and has gotten in the way. But, yeah, there will be another project that we're going to cook up sometime soon.
Yeah.
So that's pretty
Excellent.
exciting.
I look forward to hearing the goodness that comes out of that. How did that come about? Was she in Australia?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long story too. But years before I met Pieter, a friend gave me a mixed cassette that had a whole lot of different stuff on it, and there was one song of Pieter's on it, and I was so transfixed by this song and her voice, and I just, you know, I wore the tape out and I was like, who is this woman? I must hear more, and I feel like we're friends. You know, like I just had such a crazy connection to this one little piece of music. And the friend had given me this cassette as like a travel tape because I was travelling Europe at the time with my Walkman, as one did. Yeah. Anyway, so I was trying to track down Pieter's records. I found a copy of her first album in a shop in London, and I listened to that. And it took me a while to find anything else of hers. Anyway, fast forward a few years, quite a few years, and I'm, working with Vitamin Records, and Glenn Wright, who ran that, also ran the Mullen Music Festival. And I remember just having a conversation with Glenn one day about the next lineup, and did I have any... he was just picking my brains about who should he book. And I was like, okay, this is how I can get Pieter Brown to Australia. So I put Glenn on to P, and then, again, it took a couple of years for it to actually happen, but that's how Pieter and Bo Ramsey first toured Australia. So they played at the festival. They did a handful of other shows around the country, and Hamish and I opened some of those shows.
Great.
So that's when we first met. But yeah, I mean, I was coming in as a super fan.
Yes.
And of Bo's as well. Yep. And I remember when, not long after they, flew home to the States, and then Pieter sent me this email, this incredible, beautiful letter saying, amongst other things, she said, I hope you don't think I'm crazy, but I can't stop thinking about, because she came, she obviously heard me and Hamish play, and so she just sort of pitched it to me saying, I don't know what shape it's going to take, but what do you think about us trying to do something together?
Sure. Yeah.
So I was like, I feel like that's a really good idea. So we wrote our first song together via correspondence.
Yeah.
Which I'd never done before.
Yeah,
right.
Same.
So yeah, I wrote, I had this half song that just felt like a, it was for this combo, and I sent it to Pieter. She sent back a couple of verses. Really quickly, we toed and froed this thing, and I was like, oh, wow, there's a song. So we had planned to make the record that way, just, file swapping. Which, it's amazing that you can do that. But that said, obviously, there is nothing like being in the same room as each other.
Nothing like it.
So I'm so glad that for a bunch of reasons, we actually... I think what happened was I was touring... I had like a 2-month European tour booked, but I didn't have my tickets yet, my aeroplane tickets.
Yeah.
And I was like, I might just... the great thing about coming from Australia is that everywhere is far.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I'm going to go all the way to the Netherlands and Germany and Romania, why not go via Iowa? It actually doesn't make much difference. So I tacked that onto the front of this European tour and spent a couple of weeks with Pieter, and we just...
Great.
made a record together there and then. So that album's sort of half co-writes and then a handful of, each of our songs. And it's a purely duet record. And that was nearly 10 years ago that the album came out, but we have toured together a bunch of times in both here and in the States and various other parts of the world too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So good that the whole story came through, like, from having a song on a cassette, you were like, who is this artist?
Yeah.
To, maybe a couple of years later to have been writing songs and then releasing a record with that person. I think that's such a great thing for us as artists as well, to go, well, put your head down, make it happen. Like,
and that's it. It's like, I'm a big, you just got to follow the music, don't you? I mean, and those, it's not everyone that you have this really sort of incredible chemistry with in terms of harmony singing, for example. No. But when you find those people, it's just like, that shit's special, So, just kind of following those connections that feel really strong, even if it's, I don't understand hardly anything actually, so I don't know where that stuff comes from, but it's like, you know it when you feel it.
Yeah, that's it, just trusting your gut.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And those, those connections, that's one of the great, great, great treasured things for me about having, music being so central to my world. It's like the camaraderie and the community, and it's such a precarious line of work in a lot of ways, but it is so rich in all of that. In those connections, like I think of, Hamish Stewart, who I've worked with for nearly as long as I've had that guitar, and there is nothing like the relationship you develop with someone with whom you've made so much music, let alone spent so many hours in a car with. It's like,
absolutely,
it's like that's what sustains me. Those connections.
Yeah, and it really does help the music exists, I guess, initially, right? Like you don't. That kind of is the reason why you might want to collaborate with someone, because of the music. But then the music becomes almost secondary in a way, or it becomes, maybe not secondary, but like just getting to know someone through music. You just cut lots of crap out.
Yeah.
You just sort of like straight to that person's soul.
Yeah.
Straight to that person's inner self, and then it's like, well, cool, we've had our date.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a great way to communicate and to meet people and to hang out, and like you said, it's a very open and loving community.
Yeah,
it's
really
wonderful.
is.
Yeah, and to do it abroad like that too. Like if you were travelling to Iowa, was she in like Des Moines or something like that? Or
she's in Iowa City.
Iowa City. Okay.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's such a great experience in itself. Let alone
absolutely
working with someone like that. So that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's coming up crimson, coming up gold, coming up bright, coming on cold, and the smoke is rising in drifts of white from factory stacks at the edge of town. It's shifting light, riding out past these steep pitch drifts, with my very blood pinging in agreement and swimming with the thought of you. And I was driving between cities last night, your pretty hands at the wheel, me curled up on the passenger side. It's coming up crimson, coming up gold, rushing up so wild, taking a hold, and it's a rushing smile, and I can't hide. How'd you do that thing, and light up all these lights? How'd tried to do that thing that I've always said.
And let's talk about your work with Hamish. Like, did you hunt Hamish down because of his amazing drumming? Or
No, not at all.
Was he just like lingering in the studio one day or something? Like,
Who is that
Who's
guy?
that guy?
Who's that guy hiding behind the tree? No, so that actually... Well, Glenn Wright's responsible. He's come up in conversation a bit. He's... So I'd made... Let me see.
was Glenn the
Glenn was the vitamin...
producer? Oh,
No,
he's the vitamin.
so he was the distributor, and
Right.
he used to run a venue in Sydney called the Harbourside Brasserie. And yeah, so that he was sort of in the thick of the scene there, and then moved up to Mullumbimby and started a record label.
Right.
Back when that was a thing.
Back when there
to
was
do.
CDs
Anyway,
and records.
yeah. But so I was getting ready to make my 5th album, Black
Right.
Across the Field. And I had, I'd recorded some demos. I was not sure how I was going to make it, but I'd made the preceding 4 albums essentially either in my own or someone else's home studio. So I just kind of assumed I would do another version of something like that.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Glenn about, my plans, and he is like, you should meet my friend Hamish Stewart. I think he could be the right guy for you to work with.
Yeah.
So Glenn introduced me to Haim and to Dave Slimes as well,
Sure.
bass player. And I remember I burnt a CD of my demos and sent it to Hamish in the post. And then he called me, when he'd had a listen. And just within moments of that first phone call with Haim, the way that he was talking about my songs and the way he talked about what he could hear bringing to them, it was just... I didn't know anything about him. Excuse my woeful ignorance. I had no idea he was
Yeah.
this fucking legend, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I was just like, I don't need some fancy session cats. That was my attitude.
Totally.
So I'm a little dickhead.
It was baggage and, ego.
I was like, oh, these fancy dudes,
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought, it can't hurt. Give it a go. Anyway, so, yeah, sent home the stuff. He loved it. He just got really excited.
Yeah.
And so I was living down the far south coast of New South at that point. So I came up to Sydney and we met and we did a gig together, and I've literally never looked back. I mean, Hamish has been my band
Yes.
ever since.
Yeah.
And we did work. So we made that record, Black Across the Field. Hamish and Dave were co-producers on that, and we also had the incredible Chris Abrams. And they've been my team for the last 4 or 5 records.
Fantastic.
So again, I just feel like I still pinch myself sometimes. I'm just
Yeah.
like, you want to talk about being a fan of someone. Chris Abrams is like, it's not a competition, but I reckon I'm his biggest fan. And I remember when, I didn't know Hamish very well at this stage, and we were, working up the songs and getting ready to go into the studio like the next week. And Haim said to me, is there anyone... He said, don't worry about, if they seem, however they appear in your eyes. Like, just in terms of musicians, is there anyone you can imagine loving having,
Yep.
to play on your record? And so I said, wow, well, it'd be a total dream if Chris Abrams was into it. And he's like, I'll call him now. And, those little moments, I was like... I still remember thinking, what? Really? Which is really cute now,
Yeah.
because, of course, everyone is just a person. And and I knew, it's like, they're not going to do it if they don't want to do it.
That's
like,
exactly right.
if they feel like they've got something to bring to the party, then I cannot wait to hear what that is. And that's kind of how I've rolled ever since. But, yeah, they've been my A-team,
That's so good.
which is pretty... And Haim and I actually, our first duo show was an accident, because that was, I think it was maybe a year after that album had come out, and we'd been touring as a 4-piece, as much as I could afford to do.
Yeah.
God damn the maths. But I'd been booked to do a solo gig at the Darwin Festival, and Haim was up there playing with another act.
Yeah.
And we realised we were both, on the bill, and our sets didn't clash. So I was like, Haim's like, why don't we just do a duo? thing. And I was like, yeah, fun. Anyway, so we play that set, and I don't know who said it, you know, if we both said it or who said it first, but we definitely looked at each other at the end of that set and was like, think the rest of the band just got fired.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we've been predominantly a duo ever since.
Wow.
So,
That's so cool.
yeah.
And it's great of someone like Hamish because, you know, with his history and his ability, and for him to trust his gut as well and go, I really like this.
Yeah.
I really like the music. I really like hanging out with Lucie.
Yeah.
I'm going to inject my time and energy into this as well.
Yeah.
For someone of his caliber, and God, there are so many bitter old musicians out there.
I know,
you know.
right?
But for someone to go, no, I'm excited by this. This is cool. This is a thing I'm going to pursue and I'm going to commit.
Yeah.
Such a great thing to be a part of.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you know, clearly Hamish's musical skills are just completely off chops. I mean, he, you know, is the most amazing player.
Yeah.
And such a lyrical, painterly accompanist, as well as being able to smack out a groove like the best of them.
Yeah.
But even if he was a pretty shit drummer, I would have that guy on tour because he's so hilarious. And anyone who spent time on the road with grumpy or, you know, otherwise difficult humans knows that is a whole kind of special, you know, he's one of the most buoyant and hilarious humans in my life.
Yeah.
And that he happens to be an absolute legend of a drummer as well. He's like...
Yeah, he's got that up his sleeve.
It's weird that that's almost the bonus, you know? But it's true. Yeah, it's golden.
Yeah. I almost went to New Zealand with him, with Tony Swain recently. Because of Big Roy passed away. Very sad to hear about Big Roy.
I know. What a proper sweetheart he was.
Oh, he was an absolute legend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing person and
smart,
amazing
funny,
player.
generous.
Yeah.
Wonderful
absolutely.
human. Yeah.
Wonderful human. So we've all lost out on Big Roy.
Yeah.
But I was going to head out to New Zealand with Swano, and Hamish was on drums. Mm-hmm. But I had a gig committed already, and I was like, I had to, you know, had to be strong and can't do it at all. But I'd love to play with Hamish again in the future. Well, not just play, just see him play, or just hang out with him, have a cup of tea, and hear some stories. Or
no shortage of them.
No shortage of stories. Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's such a good thing to try and, you know, we all try and have that. I think, don't we? That relationship with someone you don't even have to sort of speak to. You know, you can just be on stage with someone and you get to know them so well that things just develop the way that they're meant to, and
absolutely
you can read each other, and it's so dynamic. It's magic.
It sure is.
Actually, speaking of dynamic, I remember watching you and Hamish, must have been at the Falmouth Community Centre.
Oh yeah.
Tiny little intimate venue where it would have been what, maybe 30 of us.
Yeah. Is that with when Jimmy Dowling was touring with us? Was it that?
Oh yeah, it was with Jimmy.
With Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Bloody,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like scattered with beanbags everywhere, and just
classic.
hearing you guys just in an unamplified space, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like your vocals, that was it.
Yeah.
And just like the roar when it like reaches its peak.
Yeah.
And then like it's subtle.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so...
The full throttle to the pin drop spectrum.
Yeah.
It's really... Yeah. I know.
Yeah, special moments like that. I think unamplified music is such a reward or a treat.
I know.
You know, like we go and see... Not we... I haven't seen many big gigs for ages, but, you know, this stadium bullshit, you know, like who wants
to be honest, I've hardly ever seen any big shows like that. I mean, I have seen a few, but definitely as a punter as well as a performer. I mean, it's just a totally different thing. You know, if you're dozens of meters away from the first audience, you know, and there's shitloads of them, it's like, I mean, that's, you know, that can be really exciting and a whole other thing.
Absolutely.
But for me, I'm just a real sucker for that you know, the energetic transmission that happens in a small space with minimal like basically the amplification is just so that someone can hear what I'm singing at the back of the room.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's been plenty of situations where we've had mics on Haim's kit.
Yeah.
But, you know, I always say, you'll be surprised, please. Like, we just want to be, when we're quiet, we're so weirdly quiet.
Yeah.
And when we're loud, it's a bit scary. But trust us, you know, this is me talking to an engineer just going, it's okay, you know, like, let us ride that. And, yeah, I mean, because if you're getting lift off and it's really happening, and there's however many people in the room, 5, 50, you know, whatever it is, it's like, if they're digging it and you're really digging it and it's all working, it's like, there's actually nothing quite like whatever that is, you know, that transmission.
Well, it's like an equal energy between everyone because everyone's in that moment.
Yeah.
Whereas you get to
there's no separation in that way.
There's no separation. You get to a big stage or a big environment, you know, you might have 10, 15, maybe 30% of the people really engaged and in the same moment. Others are probably just there having a beer and just talking some shit to their mate or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you get a small environment and you get 100% of the audience in that place, it's such a, it's a special...
It's really fun.
fun thing to do with your time.
Very much the best.
And you got a newish record, I noticed. When I say newish...
Look at my face. I'm like, do I?
Do I? well, newish as in like, you know, in the
My
last
most
5
recent
years.
release.
Your most recent release.
Yeah.
There's not many guitars on it. Is there a guitar on it?
Yeah, I play guitar on maybe 3 or 4 songs.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is my most recent release. My face just went like that.
Sorry.
I was like, oh my God, so much has happened since that album came out. I just can't even really remember it.
Sorry, I should have set that up better.
No, that's good.
So
it's good for me to remember.
Did you lock yourself in a cabin somewhere with a keyboard? Is that kind of how it came about?
Yeah. So the album's called Kitty and Frank, and it's a concept record, which is still vaguely hilarious to me. I did not set out to do that, but it's a really long story, but the short version. No, I'm not even going to tell the story. I'm just going to say I'd written one song for these 2 characters who were real people in history, and so I'd written this one love song for them, and then maybe a year went by, and then I wrote another one. And then their whole story, I have to just give you a little bit, because no one knows what the fuck I'm talking about. So my mate Craig Lawler runs Blind Freddy's Bushranger tours out the back of Canaldra.
Right.
And I got a sort of complimentary tour when I was passing through doing a show in Goolagong one time, as you do.
As you do.
Craig is a truly fabulous storyteller and sort of bushranger sleuth / nerd, right?
What a guy.
I know. Such a great storyteller. So he sort of regaled me with this whole story, including, you know, a part of his story was this love story between Kitty and Frank. And Frank was Frank Gardner, who was by all accounts, a terribly handsome and charming bushranger. And Kitty was a young colonial woman who'd grown up on the banks of the Lachlan in central western New South Wales and, you know, was married off quite young. Anyway, white fellas discover gold. There's a big gold rush. Part of the influx is Frank. The short version is they meet each other, they fall madly in love, they run away together, and they do not live happily ever after. It's just the most epic, tragic, romantic, fabulous story filled with incredible, you know, side stories and you name it. So after having written a couple of songs for Kitty and Frank, it sort of wouldn't leave my little songwriter's brain alone. Yep. So I was like, shit, I think there might be a whole record's worth of material here. As I sort of researched and, you know, got fed more info from Craig, the shape of the album was really clear in terms of which chapters of their story I knew I could turn into a song. But what took me ages to work out was the sonic world that those songs would inhabit.
Sure.
You know, I knew that, I mean, I didn't really, this was not the primary motivation, but I was like, you know, if if you give someone these basic ingredients and say, I am a folk singer, I am writing about bushrangers, people are going to go, oh, well, there's going to be banjos and lagerphones and, you know.
Yeah, it's sort of
And I
got
was
a
like-
template already, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I just knew that I didn't really want...
Yep.
In some ways, this was going to be my least folky record.
Yep.
Not that I think any of my records are very straightforward folk. I've never been able to categorise them very well. Anyway, that's not my job or my problem.
Moving on.
But yeah, so I did. I borrowed a friend's like little shitty MIDI keyboard and sent myself off to a little shack in the bush and just started mucking around with crazy synth sounds and writing riffs and you know, and having this sort of really exciting lightning bolt moments where I was thinking, I don't even have to... I guess every other album I was filled with songs that I'd been touring, that I'd been playing out, they'd formed themselves over time.
Yeah.
Then I'd go into the studio and play them all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, actually, no, I'm going to write this album with, you know, my Dream Team band.
Yeah.
I was like, you want some really good synth playing? You know, Chris Abrams can do. You know, like I don't have to sweat not quite knowing how this song goes yet if I can just make the... So, yeah, I'd never kind of shaped up demos in that way knowing that they were going to first come to life in the studio.
Yes.
So fun.
Yeah.
And so interesting for my... I mean, you know, whatever your normal kind of shtick is, it's so clearly so good for you to just break out of those patterns or those...
It'd be so freeing.
Yeah. So...
And to not have to go out and play them with a band or with a duo.
To try and kind of form them up. It was like, no, this is an album that's going to come out of... It's going to be made in the studio first and then I'll work out how to deliver it later.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the songs I have been playing out, like I said, there are a few that I wrote on the guitar. I think there's... No, none of them go that way. There's a few that I... you know, then tried to reinterpret onto the guitar so I could deliver them more convincingly if it was just me.
Yeah.
But I also embarked on this whole... I mean, I play quite a lot of keyboards on that record as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was the first time I'd toured being a keys player as well, which I actually found was so fun, but it was so stressful.
It would have
like
been.
I had this whole MIDI Ableton thing set up, you know,
Right.
with libraries of sounds and the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, like when I break a string, it's really obvious what's gone wrong and I can put a new string on.
Yeah.
It's like when shit goes weird in the computer,
Yeah, it's not visual. You
I don't
can't,
really... My troubleshooting capacity is very limited.
Yeah.
Anyway, it actually went remarkably smoothly given the new layers of technology involved. But, yeah, and I mean, you know, that was sort of a tough tour. It was... We got about halfway through it and then had planned to do a whole bunch more. And then, of course, that's when the pandemic struck. And
Yeah.
But, you know, everyone's got... affected everyone in that way.
Yeah.
So...
No, I really... when I first put it on, I was like, hang on a minute.
Hey, where are the guitars?
Hang on a minute. Yeah, this is Lucie Thorne. Oh, and then you start singing. I was like, yeah, it's definitely Lucy. But it just sort of took the rug out from under me a little bit, you know? Like I was like, oh, this is exciting.
I'm confused.
But it's comforting, yet it's also, sort of shaking my, I guess, preconceived, you know, people have preconceived ideas of artists.
Absolutely. That's
and becomes like a cookie cutter almost, you know, like you can go so far, but you can't go too far from, but you've just went, it's so, like the drums in it are so powerful and energetic. And I was like,
it's pretty exciting
it's
stuff,
exciting.
isn't it?
Yeah, I had it driving in. I was like, wow, this is really fun. I was like, you could...
And, you know, I guess I've always, I mean, you know, I'm just trying to follow the song to wherever it's supposed to live, you know, and I knew that, I mean, I guess that's why it took me, like when it came to actually making the record, we made it really quick. Like the turnaround was pretty fast, but it took me just a really long time to work out how to do it. And I mean, you know, songs are such strange little creatures, aren't they? It's like you can try them with different sets of trousers on or whatever you want, however you want to describe it.
Dress them down.
But, you know, then when I was like, oh, no, these can be kind of big pop songs or, you know, synth ballads or like whatever else is in there. But it's like, to me anyway, each story of each song found its own little home, and there are some piano and guitar ballads on there too, and there's still a bit of a mix. But overall, I'm sure it confused and alienated a lot of my fans, but it's not really my problem.
Like you said, it's not your problem. You just make the music, make the next record, and
just trying to
let people
keep trying to make the music.
Make of it what they will.
Things are changing every day. It's turning up in the dirt and gravel, flashes in the riverbeds and the clay. They say it's wild, the veins keep stretching out or down. It's right with fortune shifters. One for frost and two for fire. Find bright golden flooding plains. I climb up through the granite and boulders and watch them come in droves now every day. They say it's wild, there's more I know it, more it's turning me bold and wild. The plains are golden.
Speaking of music, when I got here, there's a little setup here on the table. You said you've been remotely producing some content for other people.
Yeah, well, not even remotely. I've been
No?
in the last few months. I have produced 2 albums that are both nearly finished.
Great.
And it's funny, I mean, no one cares, but personally, I was a bit allergic to the term producer for ages.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, it just sounds a bit pompous or something. And I guess because I've only, I've made my own records, and I've been like the fucking queen of DIY for a couple of decades.
Yes.
So it's like, to be honest, I'd never actually separated out all of those things that might fall under the producer's umbrella.
Yep.
It's just like, that's just stuff you do when you're making a record,
Yeah.
So anyway, project enthusiast is a label I quite like. But so, in recent months, I have just been working with 2 really dear friends, Sarah Tindley up in northern New South Wales. We just have recorded her new album, and I sing and play guitar on it a lot as well. We've just made that up in the studio up near Byron. And The Yearlings, beautiful duo from South Australia.
Yeah, great.
So we tracked their record in July over in SA, and James Hazelwood was on bass and Hamish Stewart was on the drums.
Dream team.
So 2 really amazing bodies of work. And it's the first time, like working on these 2 projects, it's the first time I've been so involved, in someone else's baby, as it were.
Yeah.
And I've been surprised at how, I thought, at first I thought, I'll just sit in the studio and like cheer them on.
Yes.
And say, does anyone want a cup of tea? And then it's like, that's pretty much my job description, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, actually there's a whole myriad of things. And, it's all sprung from really loving. I couldn't have done it if I didn't love the material.
Yeah.
And I feel so attached and sort of involved in both of these projects. So yeah, so fun to be able to contribute and to be back in this. If you'd said to me 6 months ago, "Are you going to be in this studio making 2 records this year?" I would have just blinked at you and gone, doing what?
You're doing what? Yeah.
You know, it's been a weird, rough trot. I haven't personally been writing very much. But yeah, to be able to jump back into being a musician and, you know, being so involved in these projects without actually having any...
I was going to say...
you know, it's sort of not really...
So not
I was
emotionally
say it's not
attached...
my problem, but it's, you know...
Not without being emotionally attached to material and having a say. I know that when you write your own stuff, like you're so in it, like it's yours, it's your creation, you want to be in control of it. And then to have someone from outside go, no, do this, do that, try this, try that, or whatever. I know as an artist, you almost feel confronted or you sort of start doubting things perhaps, or I suppose different personalities take it different ways. But
for sure.
How have you gone in that regard as an outside? I know you said you're friends with these people.
Well, that's the thing. I don't feel very outside. Like, I feel like it would have been like if someone had shipped me in to produce their record and I didn't know them, or anyone in the crew, that would be. I mean, at this stage, I can't imagine wanting to do that. You know, all that working and all. Yeah. But, I mean, and they've been two very different projects. Like with the Yearlings, for example, they've almost made this next record a few times and they had, you know, 2 albums worth of material. Sure. And I think they'd probably got to the point where they weren't even sure. I mean, my first job was they sent me 2 albums worth of demos. Yep. And they were like, we're not even, you know, we know some of the ones that are our favourite. And it was, I mean, you know, I've been dear friends and fans of their work for years. And clearly it was like, well, my opinion is just one kid's opinion, but you asked for it and I've got one. So, you know, starting off with saying, to me, these 10 songs are so clearly the album.
Cool.
You know, and I really want to hear you make it with this band. Yeah. And so, you know, then from there sort of, you know, doing a little bit of sort of teamwork on the finessing the form and, you know, shaping up the arrangements and... you know, instrumentation and stuff like that. So, yeah, that was... But most of those songs that are on that... Oh, my God, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. It's so good. So that record's being mixed at the moment. And so, yeah, in the last week, you know, a few mixes have been coming down the line and I'm just jumping around onto my headphones going, oh, my God, soon to be unleashed on the world.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah, and then Sarah's record, we were also going to make that some time ago and all manner of life and death have gotten in the way and so that's been a huge project and that's a very different project. Like a lot of those songs were brand new. Sarah hadn't played out. Yep. I play quite a lot of guitar on that album.
Is that a debut for her? Or she made stuff already?
No, she's made... Oh, you need to...
yeah.
So much great stuff out there in the world, isn't there? You're going to be a big fan. She's incredible.
Excellent.
See, I think this is Sarah's 5th album.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I've been deep diving on that. That one is just yesterday, signed off on the last mixes. And again, I'm just beside myself with excitement to share it with the world. So, yeah, that's been 2 incredible kind of, you know, re-entries into the
realm
musical activities.
Yeah. So did they come from, I guess, just... Were they shopping around for people or was it just like a conversation you guys had at one stage and went, oh, yeah, we really trust Lucie's judgment and maybe we should get involved? Because... Have you done such a thing before? Like,
no,
or is this
that's
like a
the
whole
thing. I've done that on my own projects, but I've never been involved in someone else's record in that way. So, I mean, I think for both projects, it all started just from conversations about, you know, these beautiful songs and how me just being a kind of keen pal saying, come on, make the record. How are you going to do it? Who's going to be on it? What songs, you know? Yeah. And then I guess, you know, both the Yearlings and Sarah you know, love my work and what I might bring, you know, my general kind of sensibility or my general approach. So, you know, not wanting to kind of ship in some, you know, buffy bigwig or something. Yeah. But just to have that, you know, to have a sounding board, to have someone who genuinely loves the shit that we're trying to make and... you know, we know each other well enough that the comms are really easy and clear and it's just all about making the most beautiful version of these records that we can. So it's such a joy, to be a part of. Yeah. And also hilarious. Like both crews are just some of the funniest, most fabulous humans. So,
happy days.
Yeah. If it can't be fun, I know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one thing I need to make more of an effort with is the sounding board producer thing, because like I'm the same. I've been DIY for forever, and there's only so much of your own voice that you can put up with.
Is there?
Well, there is, isn't there?
I don't know.
And you trust the guys in your band, but you sort of want someone else to throw some ideas around, and like the producer title has always been a confusing. It's like, what do they do? Like, are they like just making cups of tea, like you said, but sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes all they need to do is just make a good vibe in the room, and the music comes out. But I don't know. Everyone's different. And the more I listen and participate in music, the more I realise how important that person is. And I guess recording as well, because I've been recording a lot of people for the last, 10 years or so as well. And you sort of put that hat on without really knowing it, don't you? Like that interaction you have between people. And so, it's just another way to dip your toes into that musical pool. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah. And speaking of records and things, have you got much coming like in the pipeline, or are you sort of writing, or because you've been busy touring as well with Matt Walker and Tex Perkins?
Yeah, I have. Well, I've done a bit of that. That was another COVID accident.
Yeah.
Because while I was living up in northern New South, when the pandemic had certainly settled in, Tex had started doing this online show thing, getting a different special guest in.
Oh, yeah.
So a mutual friend, after I think he'd made 2 or 3 of them, and a mutual friend had said, Lucie Thorne's hiding out in the hills, you should get her in. And, Tex had never heard of me, and he looked me up and then invited me in, and we filmed the show. And then by the end of the night, by sometime in the wee hours, he's like, you should join my band. It's the short version of how that all came about. Yeah. So I've been, and that was an incredible opportunity, because I obviously, hardly any of us were working at all. I was able to do a handful of gigs here and there with Tex, and then even as the COVID world shifted, there were more touring opportunities, and such a fun combo for me to be able to open those shows doing my thing, but also play guitar in someone else's band, which is not something I've done a lot of. Yeah. And so fun, and kind of feels, I don't know, it feels...
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Because the spotlight isn't on you.
No.
And you haven't got the stress or the anticipation from... you just like this... It's like you got a leave pass. You just go hang out and just... sing some songs and play some guitar. And
it's really fun. So, they're actually Tex and the Fat Rubber Band, which is Matty Walker and Roger Bergadaz and Stephen Hadley and all those gorgeous guys. They've got a new record coming out soon, and actually they've recorded a new song of mine.
Oh.
That I haven't even recorded yet. The cheeky buggers. But I did, no, they have my permission to do that.
Good.
In fact, I sing on it a little bit too. So... But I've got a few things in the pipeline. I mean, there's going to be some more stuff happening with Pieta. Like I said, I haven't been writing very much. I've just been it's been an awful lot going on. But, I know I've been doing it long enough, and I know myself well enough to know that I've got this, I don't know how to describe it really, but it sort of feels like a kind of background itch that's like, oh yeah, I know there's a whole lot of songs that are going to come out of me pretty soon. Yeah. Just need to settle myself down somewhere. Yeah. Shut a few doors and say goodbye to the world for a little bit. And so I'm definitely looking forward to that, embarking on that chapter.
Excellent. I'm sure we're all looking forward to what comes of that as well.
Yeah.
Well, I reckon we might wrap it up there, Luce. Thank you very much for having a chat.
Such a delight to have a chat with you, Pete.
Yeah.
Good on you.
And can't wait to see you perform again sometime, or just hang out for another cup of tea. And thanks for the Earl of Tasmania bag of tea. I'll take that home. And
yeah, you're going to have to take a couple of other things too. I'm trying to empty this house.
All right, take it easy.
Good on you, Pete.
Good on you. Thanks for listening, folks, to another episode of Say It With Guitars. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, share it around to your mates, leave a good review, and hopefully we'll see you next time.